For nearly 100 years, the United States has been involved in the Middle East in some form. Over the decades, alliances have shifted. Today's partners were once enemies, and old allies have turned into opponents. Through diplomacy, military intervention, and strategic agreements, the U.S. has embedded itself deeply in the affairs of the region. But what lies at the root of this persistent engagement?
The Middle East stretches across Western Asia and parts of North Africa, rich in resources and positioned in a crucial spot on the global map. This strategic geography has long placed it at the center of international policies, including that of the United States. Back in 1938, an American company struck oil in Dhahran, eastern Saudi Arabia, uncovering what would become one of the world's most vital energy reserves. Oil soon became the backbone of the global economy, and with it, the region gained enormous strategic weight.
By 1945, the U.S. had built its first military airfield on Middle Eastern soil, also in Dhahran. While many associate America's interest in the region with oil, the reality is that the U.S. doesn't depend on Middle Eastern oil to meet its own energy needs. It's largely self-reliant in this regard. As of 2022, the United States was the world's largest oil producer, outpacing Saudi Arabia by over 30%. But control isn't just about supply, it's also about managing others' access. This includes Western allies as well as rivals like China, which still relies heavily on Middle Eastern oil. Beyond energy, the Middle East is a massive market for the U.S. arms industry. In 2023 alone, the U.S. made a record $238 billion selling weapons and military equipment to foreign governments, accounting for more than 40% of global arms sales that year. But these partnerships aren't just financial. By exporting arms, the United States also extends its geopolitical influence. For example, Israel remains the largest total recipient of American aid since World War II, and a large part of that assistance is designated specifically for purchasing U.S. military gear. So these alliances are also about establishing strategic dominance. And to effectively project power in this region, Washington needs reliable allies. America's relationships in the Middle East have continuously evolved. Some ties are formal, like with Turkey, a NATO member which, in theory, obligates the U.S. to defend it if attacked. Others have emerged more informally, shaped by regional conflicts and shifting power dynamics. During the Cold War, the Middle East was a significant battleground between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. In recent decades, Russia has stepped up its presence again, particularly in Syria, maintaining troops and backing regimes. Moscow has gained a reputation as the go-to partner for authoritarian governments. When the U.S. pulls back, it often leaves a void that Russia is eager to fill.
The United States has long pledged unwavering support for Israel. That promise has stood since Israel's founding in 1948, rooted in historical responsibility, especially in light of the Holocaust and the events of World War II.
President Truman was the first world leader to officially recognize the newly established State of Israel, just 11 minutes after its creation. Many in the U.S. believe there's a duty to safeguard the Jewish state, which had been promised a homeland in the region. American leaders have repeatedly highlighted the shared democratic values between the U.S. and Israel when referencing their special relationship. But it's not just about ideology. Since the 1990s, the U.S. has played a central role in attempting to mediate peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Despite recurring setbacks, any future agreement is almost certain to involve American sponsorship. And America's focus isn't limited to Israel or Saudi Arabia. Today, it maintains strong relationships with other regional players like Qatar, Bahrain, and Egypt. Interestingly, Iran was once considered a close partner of the U.S., especially in the mid-20th century. That bond was shaken when the CIA helped orchestrate the 1953 coup that ousted Iran's first democratically elected leader, Mohammad Mossadegh.
The U.S. involvement in toppling democratically chosen governments, particularly to block the spread of communism or left-leaning ideologies, had long-lasting consequences, not just for the Middle East, but globally. However, after the 1979 Islamic Revolution, when Iran transformed into a theocratic republic, the relationship turned hostile. Since then, Iran has emerged as a major regional challenger to American influence.
The United States has participated in several wars across the Middle East, but among experts, one stands out above the rest: its 2003 invasion of Iraq. Following the 9/11 attacks, the Bush administration declared a global war on terror, with the Middle East as the main front. President Bush argued that the Iraq invasion was necessary to eliminate weapons of mass destruction, defeat terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, and liberate Iraqis from Saddam Hussein's dictatorship. But there were no proven ties between Saddam and Al-Qaeda, and no WMDs were ever found. The occupation became a costly and chaotic disaster. At its peak in 2007, nearly 250,000 U.S. troops were stationed in the region. One major outcome of the Iraq War was the unleashing of extremist factions, including Al-Qaeda, far beyond Iraq's borders, destabilizing much of the Middle East. Just 3 years after pulling troops from Iraq, the U.S. returned, this time leading a coalition against ISIS, a violent offshoot born from the power vacuum that followed Saddam's fall. In more recent years, American public opinion has soured on military intervention in the region. This has led Washington to increasingly rely on remote warfare methods. Drones, precision missiles, and long-range surveillance have become central tools in U.S. operations, minimizing direct troop involvement on the ground. Still, the U.S. maintains a presence in several Middle Eastern countries, acting as a security partner to Gulf nations confronting regional threats. The region also contains some of the world's most vital maritime trade routes, like the Persian Gulf, Red Sea, and Suez Canal. When the Israel-Gaza war flared, Houthi rebels in Yemen targeted shipping in the Red Sea. This forced many ships to reroute around Africa, extending delivery times and raising costs, despite U.S. efforts to stop the attacks. The U.S. has positioned itself as a global enforcer, assuming responsibility for maintaining stability in the Middle East and beyond. For many, it's hard to imagine the region without America's involvement.
But in the end, for some observers, it all boils down to one thing: power. The United States remains the most dominant nation on Earth. Since the 20th century, and especially after World War II, America has worked to ensure its global supremacy. And for better or worse, it's nearly impossible to picture a future Middle East where the U.S. doesn't play a key role. That responsibility to promote order and protect its interests remains a core part of its foreign policy identity.
I've been your host, Ryan, here at the Night Podcast. If you've enjoyed our work, drop a comment, hit the like button, and maybe even share it with others. Either way, I appreciate your time and support.